Hello there everybody, my name is Emilio Q. I am an inspiring filmmaker. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to go ahead and give you a list of what in my opinion are the top 5 best affordable cameras for beginner filmmakers. These cameras are for anyone that wants to get into filmmaking and they basically want to buy a new camera but they don't want to break their bank account. Now, these cameras, I would say, they might technically not be as good as some of the more newer or more expensive cameras that are coming out right now, like the Blackmagic 6K Pro, the Canon R5, or the A7S3. But if you're a beginner filmmaker, you shouldn't even think about purchasing those cameras in the first place. At least not until you've gotten a proper understanding of the filmmaking basics. You know, basic stuff like, how to frame your subject, how to frame your actors, the rule of thirds, a shallow depth of field, how to incorporate lighting into your videos, how to use sound properly and have that mix well into your film. You need to learn simple stuff like that before you get into investing, a super expensive high-end camera. Now, of course, you don't have to do this. If you have the money, go for it. Buy the newest cinema camera and just learn from there. But if you're a person who doesn't really have that much money right now, you want to get into filmmaking, but you're looking for a more cheaper, more affordable option, here's this list, and this is ultimately why I made this list. Also, I truly believe that the technical specs of any camera does not matter when it comes to shooting your short or feature-length film, because if the film has bad sound, if the film just doesn't even look good because it doesn't have proper lighting, or you have a bad script, you have bad actors, then it doesn't matter what 8K cinema camera you're using, your film's gonna fall apart at the end of the day. This is why beginner filmmakers, including myself, should invest more time in learning how to make a proper film, how to tell a story properly, and less investing on a proper camera that has all the latest and greatest specs. So, in short, just go ahead and buy a really cheap camera, make as many short or even as many feature films as possible, and learn from your mistakes. The more you do this, the more you will improve and grow as a filmmaker. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and continue with the list of the top 5 best affordable cameras for beginner filmmakers. I will say some of these cameras I have used, and some of these cameras I have not, but I did a little bit of research and I basically chose these cameras based on the video quality, which is can they shoot 24 frames per second and can they shoot either 1080p or in 4K. Most cameras are pretty affordable and can shoot that nowadays. It's not hard to find cameras that can shoot that and that are super expensive. And number 5 is going to be the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 4K. Now, this camera is probably the most expensive out of all the other cameras on this list, but if you're a person that's looking for a cinema camera, this is the most affordable when you compare it to, of course, other cinema cameras. So this camera comes out at pretty much an estimation of basically $13,000. That's a lot more cheaper when you compare it to the Blackmagic 6K Pro. That costs around $25,000, not including tax. So it's a lot more affordable and it shoots in 4K, and it has a micro four thirds high dynamic range sensor, which I think is really perfect. Micro four thirds sensors might not be as great as APS-C or full frames, but they are getting really popular and they are producing really great images when it comes to recording video. The pros of this camera is basically the easy to use menu screen. It's a lot more smaller than other cinema cameras. It looks kind of more like a normal DSLR kind of, but it's not going to be as bulky, as huge as some of those big box cinema cameras. And also, when you do purchase this camera, like any other Blackmagic camera, you get a free purchase of DaVinci Resolve, which is a really popular editing software, and it's getting really popular when it comes to color grading. That's pretty much why I have this at number 5. The reason why it's so low is because, yeah, it's a pretty affordable cinema camera, but then you also have to put in the factor that you're gonna have to buy a lot of stuff to make this camera work properly. You're probably gonna have to buy a monitor screen for the camera. You're also gonna have to buy a cinema rig, so you're gonna have to cage this camera up, and that might cost a little bit more extra money. But if you're a person who actually likes that and wants to get into rigging up a cinema camera, you want to learn how to use a cinema camera, you want to learn how to use a camera manually, because this camera doesn't have autofocus like all the other cameras on this list. This camera can only be used manually. So, but I think that's a pro, because a professional filmmaker or a person who knows how to use a camera professionally, they know how to use a camera manually and also focus manually. So if you have the money and you want to buy the cinema camera, go ahead and do some research and check out the Blackmagic 4K. Now let's go ahead and continue with number 4, which is the Canon 5D Mark II. Now, even though this isn't a cinema camera, this camera has been used for feature-length films and television. A whole episode of House was shot entirely on this camera, and supposedly Avengers, that came out back in 2012, used this camera for some shots. I'm not sure what shots they use it for, and I'm not sure how true this is, but supposedly, if you go on Wikipedia, the Canon 5D has been used for Avengers that came out in 2012. But another movie that comes to mind, which is a really great film, is called Frances Ha, directed by Noah Baumbach, and the film was shot entirely on this camera. It kind of blew me away. I never knew that. I saw the movie before, but now seeing the movie again, learning that it was shot on this camera, it's kind of crazy, and it kind of goes to show that a talented filmmaker who knows how to tell a proper story can make a beautiful looking film with whatever camera they have. The price of this camera when it first came out back in 2008 was $26,000, but now you can find this camera on eBay for $600 to $4,000. And plus, Canon produces a good amount of very affordable lenses for their cameras. So, if you want something that's kind of old, I would recommend looking into the Canon 5D Mark II. And no, it doesn't shoot in 4K or 6K like other modern day cameras, but to me, 1080p is more than good enough nowadays. There are plenty of people who still shoot in 1080p, and 1080p, to me, it still looks great. In fact, most of the people that I know who film or shoot video professionally only shoot in 1080p, so it's still kind of the norm, even though 4K and 6K has gotten pretty normal now. So if you're looking for something that's pretty affordable and that's going to produce very exceptional image quality, I would recommend looking into the Canon 5D Mark II. Now at number 3 on this list is the Fujifilm XS10. It has a 26.1 megapixel sensor, APS-C. It's not quite full frame, and it's not quite micro four thirds. It's right in between. I'm also kind of biased towards Fujifilm because right now at the moment they're my favorite camera brand when it comes to shooting video and also doing photos. These are the types of cameras that I have been using to film my own YouTube videos, like the one that I'm filming right now, and also film behind the scenes videos for independent film projects. And I just really like the quality that you get out of Fujifilm cameras. The Fujifilm XS10, it's only $1,000 just for the body by itself. If you can, I would recommend checking out the 18 to 55 kit lens that would come with the XS10 if you want to spend some extra money. I think that's a really great deal. And the same sensor that's in the X-T3 and the X-T4 comes in the XS10. So you're getting a more cheaper camera that still produces really good quality. It shoots in 1080p and in 4K. That's all I gotta say about the XS10. I do not own it, but if you are looking for a Fujifilm camera that's pretty affordable compared to the X-T3 or the X-T4, I highly recommend checking out the Fujifilm XS10. Now let's go ahead and continue with number 2 on this list, and that's going to go ahead and be the Canon T7. The Canon T7, I have not owned it yet, but it's really affordable, and it's one of the easiest cameras to get right now. I think it came out back in 2018, and it's really popular. If you go to Walmart or if you go to Best Buy, you can always find it over there. Anytime the Black Friday holiday season comes up, I always see shelves of these stacked at the camera section. And they're really popular when it comes to just consumers who are looking to buy a camera for the first time. And I really would recommend buying this camera. It's an APS-C sensor, has 24 megapixels, shoots in 1080p at 24 frames per second, which is to me the perfect standard when it comes to filmmaking. And of course, like the Canon 5D Mark II, I myself am not really a huge fan of Canon. Like, I don't own any of their cameras, but I do see the respect that Canon gets, and I do see why they have a lot of followers, because their cameras are pretty easy to use. They have a very simple menu setup, and they have a pretty affordable beginner cameras, and that's why I'm putting the Canon T7 at number 2 on this list. And also, like with the Canon 5D Mark II, that camera and the Canon T7, they have a great selection of very cheap, very affordable lenses that will produce really great video images. A good example is the 50mm f1.8 you can find for, under $150, and that will produce really good images and could be used to create a really great shallow depth of field. As of right now, you can probably find it online, or you can go to Best Buy or Walmart and find the camera, and including the kit lens, which is the 18-55, you can find it for about like $450. But if you go on eBay, you can probably find this kit for even less. Now, let's go ahead and continue with number 1 on this list, and that's gonna go ahead and be the Panasonic Lumix G7. This was the very first camera that I ever bought myself. When you compare it to its bigger brother like the GH5 or the G9, it might not be as popular, but if you are a beginner filmmaker and you want to buy something that's very affordable, the G7 is a perfect camera to start out with. The camera is a micro four thirds sensor that shoots 16 megapixels, can shoot in both 1080p and 4K. I don't know what to say, but like, I remember buying this camera for the first time, not really knowing what to expect, but the very first time I shot a video with this camera, I was just blown away with how great the quality of the images were. They were a lot more better than any of the other previous cameras that I used before. If you were to buy this camera on, say, Amazon or B&H Merch, you can probably find it for around $797, which is crazy, because when I bought this camera, it was a lot more cheaper. It was a lot more affordable. It would be around $500 or $600, including the kit lens, which is really great. But as of right now, I think this camera has gotten really popular recently, that it went back up to basically almost $800. But if you want, you can buy this camera on eBay for $400 or cheaper, and that also includes the kit lens. And that's ultimately why the Lumix G7 is number 1 on this list, because it's really affordable, but the quality that you're going to get out of this camera, to me, is really great. And it's a perfect camera to start off with as a beginner filmmaker, as of course all these other cameras that are on this list. So that's my list of the top 5 most affordable cameras for beginner filmmakers. I hope you enjoyed this list. Some of these cameras were pretty much leaning on like a high-end side, from being close to being like $13,000 to just $1,000, and some were leaning to be a lot more cheaper. Of course, some of these cameras you can find for either like $600 to like $400, heck, maybe even $300, depending on who you buy the camera from. And I hope you found this video helpful or entertaining when it comes to learning about cameras that you should purchase if you are a beginner filmmaker. In closing, that's all I have to say in this video. More videos will be coming out very, very soon. I want to make more videos dedicated to filmmaking and learning and growing as a filmmaker. I myself, like I said in the beginning of this video, am an inspiring filmmaker, and I'm hoping to make YouTube videos on this channel showing my filmmaking journey, showing me learn and grow as a filmmaker. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Of course, more videos will be coming out very, very soon, and laters.